Boom, bitty, bye, bye. Boom, bitty, bye, bye.
That's it, officially. We're
All right, now we're officially back. Okay. Quiet down. There's too much fun being had here.
And that was awesome with Senator Irwin, who decided to show up instead of call in.
Can I say something quickly about
Please,
Senator
Adam
Irwin?
Brooke, please.
I've known Senator Irwin for 25 years. And I can tell you he is a legitimate one of us. And that's something that is definitely missing in the legislature, even in local politics. There's not enough of us running for office. And now that they've normalized us, I think it's time for a few more of us to step up and do what Jeff has done. Now, of course, Jeff is the ultimate politician, so I would encourage everybody to send a little something to his campaign account. That's what they do. That's what keeps them rolling. But the problem we have in the weed game right now is that, and Carl Levin once said to me that you pass the law and I'll make the rules and I'll win every time. And the problem is that the people making the rules are not us. They've never smoked weed. They've never weighed out an ounce. They can't do weed math. They don't know what they're talking about, but they're the ones telling us what we're going to do. So on that note, I'd like to let everybody know that the black market, which has been perfected over the last 80 years, is alive and well, and they can fight it all they can, and we'll always be there for you. Okay. And that's what I'm all about.
And that Senator Irwin is awesome.
And Senator Irwin's the best. I believe he's actually a black market supporter. I've never confirmed that, but I've known him a long time.
He was filling us on the caregiver love. I know that for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's not wait any longer. We have a very special guest, John Sinclair is there. I don't even know where to begin. There's so many stories to be told. We can start with, I guess, and Adam, of course, you can, I'll let you tell a little bit of the backdrop to the extent you want to, but Hash Bash this past week went off without any arrests. That may be the first time.
We've had no arrests before.
All right. Well.
Including last year.
Yeah.
I like to put in this context that, showing up at an event like there's, 10, 12, 15,000 people, just like, go ahead.
The problem is the fact that there were no arrests doesn't mean there wasn't any crime.
That's not the point.
It means that they've overlooked things that historically they arrested people for.
I understand.
And they will arrest people next week for doing the same exact thing. Okay? It is against the law, against the rules, against everything the university stands for to set up a canopy on the Diag.
Sure, I got it.
Not only did a group do that, but they were selling cannabis, which was awesome. The reality is next week, when, I don't know, some kid decides to have a bake sale, they're going to send a cop out to tell him, I'm sorry, you can't do this. So fortunately, we're being treated a little differently. But we always have been treated differently because they used to arrest a couple hundred people on Hash Bash Saturday.
No, I remember.
So it's great now.
I remember seeing someone get grabbed by a police officer while I was standing next to them, and someone said to me, come over and do something about that.
So since
and I watched him running.
Why?
Right, like, what am I going to do?
Hand him your card.
Right.
And then come on, got locked up.
No, I mean, it was but there's always, I remember in years past, somebody not knowing that the liberty by which was taking place within the Diag extended, right? And they're all of a sudden like caught in some kind of,
What used to happen is the cops used to stand around the periphery of the crowd. And people thought you could smoke a joint in the middle of, a few thousand people with no problem. And what they didn't realize, and I only noticed this because I would eventually watch the videos and see what happened in the crowd. What would happen is some dude standing next to him would lift his hat, and 4 cops would walk in from the outside and arrest the guy standing next to him because they knew he had weed. And that's how they used to get people. And people would be shocked that they got arrested on the Diag at Hash Bash. The cops didn't arrest people because they saw the cops standing around not really doing much. But
so
it happened.
The event, of course, was a period of time that began. The original meeting was that after John's case was reversed, and there was the law deemed unconstitutional before they rewrote legislatively the new marijuana laws. There was this period of time where marijuana possession and use was...
They had rewritten the law and passed it on December 9th, 1971, to take effect on April 1st, 1972.
And it was in this period of time that the no laws and the event began.
Well, the event began April 1st, 1972, as I like to say, and I wasn't there. I'm 51 years old. We just celebrated the 48th annual Hash Bash. I wasn't there at the beginning, but when I came on board, I always saw this event as a fuck you to the man event.
That was the idea.
You could pass any law you want, and we're coming out to smoke weed because we just had this time
Fuck
period.
you.
Right. We just had this time period with no law, and now we have a law. Fuck you. So that has always been my issue, and people ask now, so Adam, after all these years you've been fighting for this, and now what should Hash Bash become? Well, they still got laws against weed, right? Fuck you. We'll come and smoke weed on your campus that doesn't allow smoking.
To start with. Well, yeah. The same people that sent you to prison for using or selling marijuana now, if you give them $66,000, you can apply for the right to sell marijuana on others. This is the present state of affairs has reached a higher point of ridiculousness than ever in its entire history. All of this stuff
All right, good. It's insane.
debating about now and the qualifications and are you a criminal? Who developed this market? Criminals. Criminal marijuana sellers. Now, if you give them $66,000, you don't have to be a criminal anymore. What kind of shit is that? I don't get it.
The idea that the state's in the business.
Why do you need 150,000 police officers to track seed to sale? What the fuck does that mean? And this is,
And it doesn't stop diversion.
But when you look at the marijuana legalization movement, every significant movement that forward has been made by citizens using the democratic initiative process. They've been sabotaged, opposed in every possible way by every legislature in the United States. And even after they passed the laws, these bills that they made in 2016 that we're still dealing with now, they did that to hold us back and to defeat the purpose of what the people had voted on. I don't know, I hate to sound like an idiot, but it's such an open and shut case to me. They get this goofy board with cops on it, and they make you give them all this money, and then they won't vote on they won't give you a license, and then
none of the cities opt in.
Then they keep changing the day. It's like a Punch and Judy show, It's totally nuts. I mean, nobody ever says that. They all approach it like it's some kind of rational political thing.
But
it's horseshit.
But that's because if you look at the majority, in my opinion, the majority of the people getting into this industry have no business in this industry. They are business people. They might be educated. They might be capable, but they need to go to somebody who knows what it's about. And that's the problem, is they think they can do it on their own. So they try and they fail. And they think that this legislative stuff that they've used in other industries that they've been involved in, it worked there. So this must be the route we have to go. And they're happy to work within it. And they don't have no concept of the reality of the cannabis industry.
I mean, whenever the state gets in the business of, taking over the business of selling marijuana is not a position the state has any history in. It shouldn't be expected to function well, and
not only that, they've been the enemy of marijuana.
Right.
But for all of these years of virulent lying, thieving, mean, cruel enemies.
Nazi dogs.
Yeah, thank you.
Jackbooted thugs.
I just say that because I did 3 years in prison as a felon for marijuana smoking. That ain't right.
That means you can't be a caregiver.
I don't give a fuck.
Right, and that's the thing.
If I want to be a caregiver, I can be a caregiver. If I want to smoke a joint, I'm going to smoke a joint. They can kiss my ass.
And that's really the.
Thank you.
And that's really the argument behind things like the Hash Bash and where I come from, where John comes from. I don't care what laws. You talk about laws in court cases all the time. You know what? Nobody's ever asked my opinion on how to fix their broken problem. because I tell them straight, because I know both sides of the story. But the reality is, it doesn't matter what laws they pass. I'm not going to follow them. And nobody else is either. I mean, we all know people breaking the law doing really well.
And I'll say something, Jim, we talked about this one time, like if you were to think about what would that look like if they were able to come up with a solution of ending the, diversion or something. It would have to be something that got to the point like a gas station that has, beer in it, right? Like where you've got it at that level where it's everywhere. It's cheap. It's in a box. You can get it. You know what I mean?
Well, but then you're still
it's never going to happen.
No, but then you're talking. Then you have problems with taxation and stuff like that because you're still going to have a connoisseur grade. Of course. I'm not going to the gas station.
No, I got that. But the point I'm trying to make it would have to be at that level where it was not worthwhile for someone to open up down the street and compete with that because it didn't make any sense.
It's no longer an issue. Plus, it also means that it's no longer an issue for law enforcement at all of any way, shape, or form. It also means that the legislature can't make any money on it.
Right, right, and then that level is the margins are going to be very minimal because it's just so much of like the liquor. But the point I'm trying to make is, if it's got to get there in order to equalize, normalize, whatever you want to call it. We are so far away from it. Whatever they did right now, they've created.
See now, we may be far from the end. But we've taken so many drastic steps. Right? The needle is, the pendulum has swung. Yeah. And it's still moving, the momentum's still going. And, they used to say, medical, you just want medical because that's your foot in the door. And all these medical people said, no, it's not. It's all about sick people. Well, no, the reality is in Michigan, the numbers prove it's not about sick people at all. There's 300,000 registered patients. There's millions of marijuana smokers.
We're getting a lot of complaints that we're not celebrated enough.
Yeah, so I was just about ready to jump in. Good call. Good preemptive strike. Hey, so look, let's hear about your thoughts on the 420th show and any events and stuff like that you got coming up.
For your 420th show, for your listeners who may not know, because I know all you guys know, I've never appeared in studio with you on this show. I've called in from all over the world on this show, but I've never appeared in studio. So when I heard it was the 420th show,
and you can smoke here.
Sorry. I don't do shows I can't smoke at. I have a real issue with that.
He's got his own show.
One exception.
He does weekly on Facebook, and I understand he does not wear any pants.
No pants.
Let's recognize John Sinclair. There's two very historical things.
I have pants on.
There's many historical things about John Sinclair. I don't want to, but there's in the two that I want to talk about tonight. Obviously, as you mentioned your time that you were in prison for marijuana. That was, of course, the one that undid the marijuana laws in Michigan at the time. I actually brought with me one of the best written opinions of all time, the People versus John Sinclair. For those that need a cite. Nobody needs to say. But I have it here. It's a great written opinion. It's still good law. Still good law. Marijuana is not dangerous. It's not a narcotic. Where's Alan? But he usually jumps in.
Alan.
But the point I'm making is it's a really important point in history. As I mentioned, there's some development with the hash bash. But
the context of this, Michael, if I can just throw this in, is that according to the legislature of the state of Michigan, marijuana was a narcotic.
Right. And that is, in this, it's not. That's what they said in the opinion. It's not a dangerous.
It's not a narcotic.
It's not a narcotic.
And it was John Sinclair who proved that.
That was the kid. And it's a great opinion. They use a lot of the language. I mean, they adopt all of his lawyer's brilliant writings, but it was a lot of material from the Schaefer Report, which was the most comprehensive study ever done on marijuana that told Nixon
in New York City, right?
Recommended Nixon to not schedule it, not put it on the schedule, and so it's a fascinating historical time. Just to follow up on that with the marijuana, as many people know, we filed a lawsuit. John is one of the plaintiffs against the state of Michigan, demanding that they unschedule marijuana from its placement on the Michigan's public health code scheduling for many reasons, amongst them being that it is not a narcotic. It certainly is not a controlled substance, as we know controlled substance to be. There are no places that anyone could mention where a person could go, get a controlled substance, and use it recreationally. That's the state of affairs in Michigan. You can't have a recreational drug or recreational substance that's being used and still call it a controlled substance. They do not exist in any universe anywhere that would make any sense.
They exist in Michigan.
Well, and the laws have
Like
been
he
filed
said.
for that. but nevertheless, it's we're hoping for a nice bookend. Now, I brought this article. I didn't want to get into this, but this. When we filed the lawsuit, we were going through, like, what's the significance now? You legalize it. Isn't this just trophy, Camorn? And the guy says in this article that I couldn't come up with like any new raids or anything. But let me tell you, there's a lot of marijuana felony prosecutions still going on, right? And I brought the article of the girl that was sentenced to 6 years in prison for having 4 nanograms of THC in her blood. Judge wanted to make an example of her. No evidence of impairment. That is because it's a Schedule 1, okay? They got a client who's a nurse. People don't even know about this terrible thing. If you're a nurse and someone accuses you of something, using drugs or something, that you go and get tested, the healthcare professional position is that if you're a healthcare professional, you can't be on any prescribed controlled substance, and certainly not marijuana. There's no Section 4. There's no immunity, despite the clear reading of the law, for healthcare professionals. And they will recommend that you have to go cold turkey for your pain medication that's licensed, that was prescribed to you by your licensed physician, or lose your nursing license. Like, this is the state of affairs. That's because marijuana, Schedule 1. There's a lot of pain and suffering that still exists out here. Am I still celebrating, Walter?
Pain and suffering, that's a way to celebrate.
The point I'm trying to make is John is coming forward again as the plaintiff to try to end this insanity.
All right, thank you, John. So, John, what do you think about the 420 in the show, and what do you have coming up?
Hold on, final historical moment, which is the most interesting.
Okay, sorry.
It involves Nixon, Rehnquist.
Just as long as it's as celebratory as.
Wiretaps. Can I tell the story you want to tell?
No, tell the story.
So when John was getting released from his Supreme Court case, he was indicted for being involved with blowing up a CIA building in U of M. Total fabricated nonsense. Anyways, they hold him in on some crazy bond in federal court. He's supposed to be released.
Kind of you to say so.
And I know the part of the story that you like, that you wanted, that is important here. They held you on bond, and you appealed the case going to the Court of Appeals of the Federal Sixth Circuit, and they relied upon a case from mobster. What was his name? Giacalone. The Giacalone case that is a published case that Giacalone's his published case got him out on bond. They used that case against you, like a mobster law that for the bond in federal court. Am I misstating that?
I'm trying to get a grip on what you're talking about.
And when you were released from the state case, they indicted you on the federal case. And
I wasn't released. I was in prison.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Right.
I was in prison without appeal bond when they brought the federal case.
Okay, and they would not release you on any bond in the federal case. Is that right? And you went up on
It
appeal.
wouldn't have made any difference because I was in state prison without bond.
Was there a bond issue in federal court? Was there a bond issue in federal court?
No, there was no state appeal bond either.
I thought you told me something. Never mind. All right, fine. So the other part of it was that...
No, the state of Michigan, the Detroit Recorder's Court, Judge Robert A. Colombo would not grant an appeal bond in my appeal of the marijuana conviction that I suffered in this court, which claim in my appeal, I appealed the fact that marijuana was not a narcotic, and so the laws were unconstitutional, that it had been named a narcotic without any due process of law showing that it was a narcotic, and so it was unconstitutional. And despite this, and despite the fact that my crime had been to give 2 marijuana cigarettes to an undercover police woman, Jane Lovelace, her name alleged to be, that was my crime, and in the light of these, he would not give me an appeal bond and sent me to maximum security prison in Marquette in Upper Peninsula without bond. So I appealed for a bond from that point forward, and it reached the Court of Appeals of the state of Michigan, and the Court of Appeals ruled, I think this is what you were referring to, the Court of Appeals ruled that I couldn't be granted a bond because I was a danger to society. And they cited the case of People versus Billy Giacalone.
There you go.
He had been convicted. A raid on his house turned up a blackjack in his sock drawer underneath his underwear. Obviously a souvenir from the days when he was a street thug who went around and beat up people to get them to give up the money. Well, it was a nostalgic item. It wasn't even a weapon. And they charged him with carrying a concealed weapon, and they convicted him, and they gave him a sentence of 4.5 to 5 years. And they wouldn't give him an appeal bond because they said he was a danger to society. He appealed that and won. He said he was not a danger to society. And they had to give him a bond, and they gave him a bond. So he didn't have to do the 4.5 to 5. In my case, I was a danger to society.
Hey, my past.
So here's the timeline.
According to the Court of Appeals. No. Let me tie this in with the law that ties into April 1st. Jesus Christ. This is all too complex. I'm not high enough. Excuse me.
Let me
have to take a couple more.
Let me throw out some of these. Listen, here's a timeline that we figured out. In 4/8/1970, when the U.S. Supreme Court granted cert in the Keith case, which is the CIA bombing
That
case.
was a federal case.
Right. Oral arguments in 11/2/72, oral arguments in the Michigan Supreme Court case, People versus Sinclair. It says 12/10/71, it may be 72. The John Sinclair Freedom Rally, John Lennon sings.
What?
Rehnquist is confirmed by the Senate. Why is that important? Well, as we know, William Rehnquist, later the Chief Judge of the U.S. Supreme Court, during this period of time, was appointed by Nixon to fill the slot and become fill the ninth slot, and was confirmed by the Senate. February 24th, 1972, oral arguments in the U.S. Supreme Court Keith case. Rehnquist recuses himself because he worked on the Keith case. Now, here's what's going on here. One of the issues that came up in John's case regarding the CIA, the co-defendant, was they were doing warrantless wiretaps.
Right.
Warrantless wiretaps. And this was going on, the Nixon administration was involved in this. And Rehnquist, who was the counsel, White House counsel or some other position there, was the architect, the one that wrote the entire blueprint of how a government is able to wiretap its citizens and what's the legal justifications. And with all his skill set and his whatever he's got going on, it's predicting where the Supreme Court is going to go if and when this happens. So what happens next is that the Michigan Supreme Court issues its opinion in the People versus Sinclair 3/9/1972. John Lennon's visa revoked by the Nixon White House. May 2nd, 1972, J. Edgar Hoover dies. 520. What? Yeah. 5/27/72, the first Watergate break-in to plant the warrantless wiretaps. So this is what's going on. There was an opinion that
the break-in to Watergate was to remove.
I understand, but
here's what here's what you have to understand, though.
That's the best part of the story. Okay. Hold on, trying to build it up. I need to say it factually misstated. I want to back up for a second. So what happened is this huge issue. Is the government allowed to wiretap its citizens? Goes to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the basis and justification was that they could and didn't need a warrant if the individuals were a threat to national security. So the argument was...
That was the premise of Nixon.
That this man...
And Mitchell and Rehnquist.
Was the threat to national security. So what happens is the case gets to the Supreme Court. Rehnquist has to recuse himself. They have 8 instead of 9. The timeline here is that 6/12/1972, there's an in-chambers vote that it is now known that there will be a majority vote saying that the wiretaps are illegal without a warrant. And it's unequivocal that when this news came in, which is like a Wednesday during the week, it goes like this. There's a Wednesday this vote takes place in chambers. The opinion is issued on the following Monday. They have a majority like on Thursday or Friday that's 8-0.
Friday.
Friday. Right, 8-0. There's a vote 8-0. And the opinion's going to come out on Monday, and that Saturday is the Watergate break-in. In other words, the Watergate break-in was not a break-in to plant wiretaps. It was a break-in to remove wiretaps that had previously been placed under the premise that they would be lawful and constitutional. And then when it got to the Supreme Court, Rehnquist's, blueprint for how this was going to take place would be secured by the Supreme Court voting in that manner. He may even be on the bench at that time. Who knows? He was probably thinking. But the reality was that it backfired. And it's believed that Rehnquist knew this because he's in the back room of seeing the vote 8-0, and he picks up the phone and says, I guess I was wrong. 8-0, I was wrong. You guys better get into wherever you played your wiretaps and get them out. And that Saturday, the Watergate scandal broke. And on Monday, the 8-0 unanimous opinion came out that the wiretaps were unconstitutional. And the point of the story is that John Sinclair took down Nixon. Nobody knows that. That's the reality. Nobody knows that is the other part of this phenomenal story. And
that is celebratory.
And proved
Amen.
Rehnquist wrong as well. That's it. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you.
That was worth it. Thank you very much. That was quite awesome. Thank you. But,
Too many mistakes on that? I don't know. It's good.
No, that was perfect.
All right.
No mistake.
what do you guys have coming up? 420. I know you have some events and stuff.
We're headed out to the M40 Speedway for the Indo Entertainment 420 reggae show.
Some cannabis and some music and hanging out.
Yeah, John Sinclair.
Yeah.
Jones, Michigan, for those of you with the mitten.
Southwest.
Southwest. Southwest.
By Niles.
By Niles, yeah.
So that was worth it. There's a lot of people here that want to offer their congratulations and be acknowledged and stuff like that.
Well, this thing that we're going to, these young people have purchased a defunct resort, and they're transforming it into a marijuana resort.
Very cool.
A bed and
They
breakfast.
have little cabins and what have you. And this is going to be their introduction to the public, and they're going to have this 420 festival.
Sounds like a blast.
They had the good taste to engage me and Adam to come down there.
Nice.
Is there a website?
They're on Facebook.
Facebook, okay.
I know that.
It's a reggae, funk, blah, blah, blah,
It's
blah.
all reggae. Yeah, they got the David Asher Band going to perform, and reggae DJs. And their plan is to do...
They're a bunch of potheads.
Yeah. So their plan is to do a bunch of shows throughout the summer, and each one will have a different... They got a country show planned and a rock show.
Thanks for the warning.
Yeah. They got Willie. They got Willie Nelson's kid on it right now.
I'm sure it's great. I'm sure.
No, I mean, whatever. Teaches them.
Great people.
Just a joke.
No.
So listen. Next break, I think Nick is going to play some live music. If I'm not mistaken, right? And,
People may think that he's in the band Weezer. He's not. It's just Nick. Just kidding.
He just smokes a lot. So
And we'll try to get a lot of people through here to offer their congratulations and stuff. But as much as you guys want to hang out and offer any input as you want, I'm sure that would be cool. But kind of want to celebrate the fact this 420th show without any much else considered.
Quite an
420th
achievement.
show. That is awesome.
Quite an achievement.
Yeah. Thank you.
Should I rip?